We have this image of the Buddha, especially after his enlightenment, as a being of perfect peace. We imagine that his mind was a placid lake, completely free from any distracting or negative thoughts. But in the scriptures, the Buddha is often visited by a figure named Māra. Māra is a tempter, a doubter, the personification of the mind's unskillful tendencies. He would appear and whisper things to the Buddha like, "Aren't you tired? Why not just give up and rest?" The Buddha's response wasn't to fight or argue. He would simply look at the thought, acknowledge its presence, and say, "I see you, Māra." He recognized the voice not as his true self, but as a temporary, conditioned visitor. He was practicing the ultimate tool for mental freedom, a tool that we too can use to meet our own inner Māra, the voice of the inner critic. This leads us to a deeply practical question. How can we use the Buddha's profound teaching of Anatta, or not self, to work with that painful voice in our own heads, the one that whispers, "You're not good enough. You're a failure. You're going to be found out." This inner critic can be a source of immense suffering, fueling our anxiety and feelings of inadequacy. We often feel that this voice is the real us, telling us a hard but necessary truth. Welcome to the Mindful Compass. Today, we're going to learn how to do what the Buddha did, to see the inner critic not as our true self, but as a temporary visitor. We will unpack the teaching of Anatta as a practical, step-by-step method to disarm this inner voice and reclaim a sense of inner peace and self-worth. To use Anatta as a practical tool, we don't need to get lost in complex philosophy. We can approach it as a simple, three-step process of seeing our own experience with greater clarity. Step 1. Reframe your mind as a committee. First, we need to understand what not self actually means. It doesn't mean you don't exist. It means that there is no single, solid, permanent CEO self running the show inside you. Instead of a single self, it's more helpful to imagine your mind as a kind of inner committee meeting. Different voices, feelings, and impulses are the committee members. There's an anxious member, a creative member, a kind member, and a tired member. And then there is the inner critic. It's just one member of this committee. It may be very loud, very persistent, and very convincing, but it is not the chairperson. It doesn't own the meeting room. It's just a conditioned voice that has learned to speak up in certain situations. The first step is to stop giving it the authority of being the real you. Step 2. Deconstruct the critic into its parts. The second step is the heart of the practice. To see that the critic is not self, we have to stop seeing it as one solid thing. We have to deconstruct it to see its impersonal components. When that critical voice appears, we can look for these 5 distinct elements. 1. First, there is the voice itself. These are the actual words or sentences that arise in the mind, like, "I'm not smart enough." We learn to see this simply as a mental event, a thought. Just a thought, arising like a cloud in the sky. Second, there is the feeling. Notice the emotional charge that comes with the voice. Is it a feeling of shame? Sadness? Fear? This is a separate element. There is the thought, and there is the unpleasant feeling. Third, there are the bodily sensations. Where do you feel this in your body? Is there a tightness in your throat? A knot in your stomach? A heaviness in your shoulders? These are physical sensations, distinct from the thoughts and emotions. Fourth, there's the label. This is the perception that bundles everything together, like a label on a box. The mind labels this collection of thoughts, feelings, and sensations as inadequacy or my self-doubt. 5. And finally, there is simple, knowing awareness itself, the part of your mind that's conscious of all these other parts. When you look closely, you don't find a solid inner critic. You find a temporary, conditioned bundle of thoughts, feelings, and sensations, all arising and passing away together. Step 3. Disidentify with kindness. Once you begin to see the critic as an impersonal process, your whole relationship to it changes. You are no longer fused with it. You are the spacious awareness that can observe it. So when the critic appears, you don't need to fight it, believe it, or banish it. You can do as the Buddha did with Māra. You can meet it with a simple, kind acknowledgement. You can say to yourself, "Ah, the inner critic committee member has arrived." Or, "I see you, voice of inadequacy." You can then gently note its parts. There is the critical thought. There is a feeling of shame in the heart. There is a tightness in the stomach. By doing this, you create space. The critic is no longer the voice of you. It's just mental weather passing through the vast, open sky of your awareness. You are the sky, not the storm. Its power comes from your belief that it is you. When you compassionately withdraw that belief, it begins to lose its fuel. So, we learn to create this inner space, to see the critic not as ourself, but as a process. How does that actually change our life? The answer is profoundly. The inner critic is the secret engine behind so much of our suffering and self-limiting behavior. Think about procrastination and perfectionism. The critic whispers, "If it's not perfect, don't even start." When we see that voice as just an unhelpful committee member, not the truth, we give ourselves permission to be beginners, to experiment, to make mistakes, and to actually create. Or think of imposter syndrome. The critic says, "You're a fraud, and you're about to be discovered." When we see this thought as an impersonal, conditioned event, like a weather pattern, we don't have to take it as a factual report. We can inhabit our roles with more confidence and authenticity. Disarming the inner critic isn't just about feeling better in the quiet of our own minds. It's about living with more courage, more creativity, and more genuine connection to others, freed from the constant draining narration of our own inadequacy. Here is a very simple, in-the-moment practice to use when the inner critic appears. It consists of just 2 questions. The moment you notice that familiar voice of self-criticism, just pause. Take a breath. And then, with a spirit of gentle curiosity, ask yourself, 1. First, is this thought actually 100% true? 2. And second, is this thought helpful? Does believing this thought make me kinder, more courageous, and more at peace? Or does it make me smaller and more afraid? The aim isn't to get into a long argument. It's simply to shine the light of inquiry on the thought. Almost always, you will see that the critic's pronouncements are not entirely true, and almost never are they helpful. Seeing this clearly robs the thought of its power and makes it much easier to let go. The Buddha's teaching of Anatta is not a cold, philosophical negation of your existence. It is the ultimate affirmation of your freedom. The voice of your inner critic is not your identity. It is a deeply conditioned, impersonal habit of the mind. And because it is a habit, you have the power to change your relationship to it. You don't need to fight it, defeat it, or silence it forever. You just need to stop believing that it's you. Just as the Buddha acknowledged Māra and let him pass by, we can learn to acknowledge our inner critic as a familiar visitor and allow it to pass through the vast, open space of our awareness without letting it rule the house. Your true nature is not the voice of judgment, but the silent, compassionate awareness that hears it. What is one area of your life where you feel the inner critic holds you back? Please share in the comments and let's support each other in this practice of freedom. If this exploration was helpful, please like this video and subscribe to the Mindful Compass. Thank you for exploring this with me. May you learn to hear the voice of your own innate goodness more clearly than any voice of doubt.